Sunday Night Football, Packers-Eagles is going to be a fantasy fiesta. The total is going to soar over 46 flat. Yeah, that's right. That's what you do at a fiesta, Matthew. I think there's a little bit of weather in Philadelphia, which I'm not that happy about, but I still think it goes over. I think it's a big game for Miles Sanders. I just don't think the Packers can stop the Eagles. And I think with the emergence of Christian Watson, that the Packers can put up points from behind. I think that a lot of guys are going to put up stats, and that game goes over 46.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Happy Monday and welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Matthew Berry and Jay Croucher. Boys, good predictions.
Hola!
The Berry
was
boost.
a fantasy fiesta.
The fantasy fiesta.
Sombreros everywhere. It's a Taco Monday.
What a
It was
game.
fantastic.
Fantastic game. Great game of Sunday Night Football.
A fantastic game of Sunday Night Football. Great call by Jay Croucher. Connor Rogers, great to see you as well here on the Happy Hour on a Monday. Normally you're with us on Fridays.
That's right.
But,
surprise appearance. I just showed up and they let me sit on the desk.
Well, listen, yeah, the Jets are back on the winning track, so now
Mike White plays.
Mike White.
They bring Mike White back, they bring me back.
That's
we go
what I'm
hand
saying.
in hand, me and Mike
That's
White.
how it all goes as well. But let's talk about this Eagles game, guys. Like
Sure.
you first off, not only was the over under 46 fairly low, but a lot of people were betting the under on BetMGM. BetMGM's happy because they won a bunch of
Did pretty
people's
well.
money, and because people weren't listening to Jay Crouch, who said not only take the over here, but start whatever players you can in this game, and paid off in a big way.
Yeah, I think the reason people started betting the under was that there was expected to be some weather in Philadelphia. Just when you're betting based on weather, make sure the weather's going to
Yes.
come. Because
Right,
it didn't
have
a
really
good
come.
weatherman.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you're a big meteorology guy. But look, I think the theory is that the Packers' run defense is really bad. It's been really bad. If they want to load the box against Derrick Henry and leave everyone one-on-one, then you can do that. But can't do that against Philadelphia because of A.J. Brown, doesn't play for the Titans anymore, and Devontae Smith. And the Eagles just lit them up and did whatever they want. And your man Jalen Hurts had quite a day.
My fantasy ride or die finishes with almost 30 fantasy points. He's now had back-to-back games with 85 rushing yards. He's had at least 16 rushing attempts each of the last two games, at least 24 fantasy points in 3 of the last 5. He's like, when I made him my fantasy ride or die, I expected a great season. I don't know that I expected this. He's been nothing short of amazing. He might be my greatest fantasy ride or die call of all time.
Wow.
I mean, look, Eckler, Kareem Hunt's rookie year was a really good one. Josh Jacobs'
My
rookie
man.
year as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Jalen Hurts has made everyone that drafted him and myself look very, very smart. Fly, Eagles, fly. It's the most rushing yards by a Philadelphia quarterback in a single game. And when you think about, they've had Michael Vick. They've had Randall Cunningham.
Great running quarterbacks.
They've had,
Nick
Nick
Foles.
Foles.
Yes.
We made the same joke,
Carson
same time.
Wentz, Ron Jaworski. They've had all these mobile great quarterbacks over the years. But no, in all seriousness, anytime you can be, when you're out rushing guys like Randall Cunningham and Michael Vick, when you have that record, the most rushing yards by an Eagles quarterback in NFL history, it just tells you something. And he's getting it done with the passing as well. 16 to 28, 153 yards, 2 touchdown passes. Honestly, could have had a few more. Kenneth Gainwell, what are we doing, Kenneth? But points galore, and the Eagles are back. Now, this is going to be interesting, though, guys. Upcoming schedule: Titans, Giants, Bears, Dallas. Titans the only run defense that you're really nervous about here. I don't know. Would either of you guys try to sell Miles Sanders high? He's had 2 bad games, and then he had this explosion. Now he gets Tennessee next week.
I don't think so. I
Same,
think he's
yeah.
fine. Yeah, Samaje Perine was able to put up value against Tennessee. Yes, that was largely because of the passing game, but at the same time, it's one game against Tennessee. The Eagles are touchdown favorites in that game, so they will be running. I think that you're fine riding with Miles Sanders.
Yeah, I agree with that, by the way. So it seems like a small thing, but he had 3 receptions in this game. Yeah. Actually starting to get involved in the passing game because previously he hadn't. This is obviously a career high for him in rushing yards game. If there's one thing that you sort of want to point to that you're just like, this makes me a little nervous, he played only 54% of the snaps, and Kenneth Gainwell actually set career highs, or season highs, I should say, in snaps, yards, and carries. So Kenneth Gainwell got the first touchdown. He vultured it. We see some footage here of Miles Sanders just moving the pile. A really impressive performance. As good as Miles Sanders is as a fantasy running back, he's that bad as a fantasy football analyst. Because preseason, he was just like, don't draft
me.
Don't draft me. He was wrong. He was wrong.
Maybe
He was playing the long
inside
game.
job.
He was playing the long. Listen, I also I got to own it. That was one of my bigger L's of the season. Is like I have faded Miles Sanders for years, and for years it has made me look smart. This year it has made me look very dumb. So as great as my call of Jalen Hurts was in the preseason, that was as bad as my call of fading Miles Sanders in the preseason.
Out.
He's been. Listen, I believe the guy. Yeah. When somebody tells me don't draft me in fantasy, I listen. What was I?
It's very weird when players break the fourth wall like
right.
that, like Miles Turner asking to get traded to the Lakers and stuff. It's just a weird thing. I don't trust that analysis.
No, you got to be careful when a player knows his own season ahead of him. I still think he's playing the long game. On the other side of this game, guys, very weird night for the Green Bay Packers. They lose Aaron Rodgers in the third quarter. Obviously, Jordan Love comes in and gives this team a big-time spark. They hung around, made a furious comeback, could not recover the onside kick. But the big story here is Aaron Rodgers leaving in that third quarter with the ribs injury, and we heard from Rodgers after the game on when he expects to potentially be back out there.
That's obviously anything core, throwing the ball, that's problematic. Between that and the thumb, is it a possibility of shutting down for the rest of the year?
I don't think so. As long as I check out fine tomorrow, I'll expect to play this weekend.
Oh, you think you might?
Yeah, as long as I check out okay tomorrow. I might not be able to go Wednesday, but as long as there's no major structural damage, I'll try and get back out there.
Aaron Rodgers really leaning into the Jared Leto, trying to hide from the paparazzi type of look in New York City. Really weird.
Casual sip in between the questions.
His aesthetic all year between the Jake Gyllenhaal prisoner's haircut to start the year, it's not gone right for Rodgers.
There's a lot going on there, a lot to unpack there, and I like he gave a pause, like I hadn't even considered that. Why would you even be asking that? He says, no, I don't think so.
Come on, Aaron.
Dude. Look. It is the world's greatest reality show is Aaron Rodgers, and I feel bad for him on some level, right? Just somebody creates himself, but it's just it is a little bit at some point give the guy a break. I will say weirdly, he had moments last night, despite the thumb injury, he had moments last night where he looked like, oh yeah, that's Aaron freaking Rodgers. The touchdown pass to Aaron Jones was beautiful,
great
right?
Throw.
That was a great throw, great play, great, to keep the play alive and find Jones in the back of the end zone. So he has moments there. They play the Bears next week. He owns the Bears, as we know. And the old rule, he's with if Mike White just threw 3 touchdowns, get me back out there.
He wants that game.
Oh,
the stats.
1,000%. It'll be interesting though. So they play Chicago next week, and then they have a bye. Then they're home to the Rams, home to Miami. I wonder after the bye, that'll be the interesting thing, is after the bye, could you say, especially if they lose the Bears, I think it's definitely over. If they big conversation to sort of see where they are playoff picture-wise after the Bears game, because you could sit there and you say, listen, it's not our year. Aaron, why don't you sit, get healthy, and let us get some reps from Jordan Love the rest of the way.
Absolutely, and Aaron Rodgers, this guy is making $50 million next year. That contract is there to stay in Green Bay. So if this season is over for the team and he's playing through something as serious as a fractured thumb, what is the benefit of him playing after the bye?
Yeah, I don't think Aaron Rodgers wants to play meaningless games against Bryce Perkins after the bye when they're 4-9. I think he just wants to get down to Peru and have another ayahuasca trip with the fellas.
Right.
I think, but the good thing is that Jordan Love, he looked much, much better than the last time we saw him, and he might be able to provide value still for Christian Watson, Al Lazard, those type of guys.
And I think that's the key, because I think that was weirdly a good thing, right? It's just that we saw Jordan Love look competent and run the offense because he's had so little rep time. I think there'd be if Rodgers had finished the game and then the news had come out he's shutting it down for the rest of the year, we'd have been oh man, so much for our Christian Watson and Alan Lazard shares, and who knows, they're going to stack the box against Jones and Dillon, and this is going to be a disaster. But he honestly, he looked good. He got them to a touchdown. He found Christian Watson. He looked like a professional quarterback running the offense, and you heard Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth talk about the fact that they, as the Packers organization, they discussed Jordan Love and how they feel much better about where he is developmentally in terms of his comfort level with the offense and the reps that he's gotten in the preseason and during practice. So I think if Rodgers gets shut down, it's a much bigger NFL story than fantasy story, and you can talk about what it means for the betting market here. But Aaron Rodgers was QB 28 in this game. Like, he was on the hate list coming into the week. Like, he didn't do anything. Under 10 fantasy points now. I don't know how super relevant Aaron Rodgers is. He'd had 2 good games. In fairness, he'd come off back-to-back 19-point games. But, like...
Yeah. Last year when Rodgers got ruled out against the Chiefs and it was Jordan Love, it was a touchdown. The line moved. It's not going to move a touchdown this time. No. It might be 4 or 5 points. We'll see.
Man, and a quarterback class that does include Joe Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Jalen Hurts. Everybody's waiting on Jordan Love. Just insane. Not a lot of quarterback classes like that.
Wow.
So we'll see if we get to see Jordan Love join that group. Let's move on to Josh Jacobs just having an insane day. An insane day against Seattle.
And by the way, credit to our Australian fan, who our friend here, fan and friend. He's both. Who, in order to honor Josh Jacobs, came in with a jersey number that's 6 numbers off.
Yes, well, I don't have a Josh Jacobs t-shirt jersey. I do have a Bo Jackson one, though, and Josh Jacobs was running like Bo Jackson. I'm a little too young to remember Bo in the flesh in his heyday, but I believe that's how Bo Jackson used to run.
Nobody is more equipped to jump on a bandwagon at any moment than
1,000%.
our Australian fan.
He is, yes, he is a fan. We have one Australian fan, and it's Jay.
It's wildly impressive.
This is the beauty of being Australian and being a betting man, is that you get to jump on the bandwagon of every bet. I've got a Josh Jacobs rushing title pick, and look, I was very excited to see what he did yesterday. Like most of America, I didn't really get to see the end of it because everything flipped over. Furiously texting friends, where is the game? Why is 60 Minutes on? Why am I learning about breakthroughs in modern medicine? I need to find out if my Seattle moneyline bet is going to get home. But yeah, Jacobs was the story, and the Seattle defense just had nothing for him.
It's crazy to think about. This is a guy who showed up on the injury report on Friday after being healthy all week, was listed as questionable coming into the game. They actually didn't want him to play overtime. They were like, because he just had a massive workload in this one, 39 touches. The dude had 39 touches in this game.
Gonna manage that cough.
This is how magical Josh Jacobs' day was. 303 total yards of offense all by himself. That is more yards of offense just by Josh Jacobs than the Rams, Texans, Broncos, Saints, Bears, and Giants had this week. More yardage than 6 different NFL teams combined in this game. It's his 4th different game with 30 or more fantasy points. Just 48.3 fantasy points. He obviously finishes as RB1. I thought my bold prediction on Fantasy Football pregame was that Ken Walker would finish as the #1 running back in fantasy. He had a nice game, 2 touchdowns. He won Josh Jacobs yesterday there, as you see how the running back leaders fall in there. Ken Walker doesn't even make the top 10 because people just had monster games. We'll get into some of these as the show progresses, but unbelievable performance. Miles Sanders had a monster game, and he was 17.3 points worse than Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs has been the best running back in football this year. He's got the highest PFF grade now. He's 111 rushing yards clear of the field for the rushing title, lapping Derrick Henry. It's not like he's got a great offensive line in front of him either.
No, to prove that point, he averaged 5 yards after contact per carry.
Unbelievable. This is a guy who the Raiders did not pick up the 5th-year option on.
Coming into the
season.
The Hall of Fame game. We say it every time.
It's unbelievable. As much as we all, everyone, not just this show, everyone in fantasy football faded Josh Jacobs this year because, for a lot of different reasons, including the fact the Raiders did. So as dumb as we are, the Raiders are even dumber because they've got a franchise running back that's going to be able to test free agency, and they're going to have to either franchise him or sign him to a lot more money than they would have if they just picked up the 5th-year option. He's been nothing short of amazing. And by the way, I don't know. He plays the Chargers next week, which is one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. How's Josh Jacobs not the #1 ranked running back in fantasy next week? Has to be.
Yep. Chargers and Rams, the next 2 up. Feeling pretty good if you have Josh Jacobs on the roster. Looking elsewhere.
Just literally putting teams on his back, fantasy teams on his back. And I just want to take one moment here. Okay. I'm just going to take a moment. I'm going to take a moment. Because I would like, people that have watched me over the years, that have watched this show, that have listened to me, they know that, I love to bitch about stuff, right? I complain and everything like that. And usually, and this happens every single week of my life, teams go off, why did this guy go off? Oh, because he's playing against me in 4 leagues. Of course he went off. I'm in 16 leagues, guys. I'm in 16 leagues. I didn't play against Josh Jacobs in any of them. In any of them. I have Josh Jacobs in a couple of leagues, so that was great. But there were 13 leagues where I was just like, oh God, I don't check who I'm playing until the games have started and everything like that. And so as I'm scrolling through, I'm like, no Josh. And it was the afternoon game. So it's like it wasn't until 7 o'clock last night that I'm start scrolling through. I wonder how many leagues I'm getting killed by Josh Jacobs in. And I'm going through, nope. So thank you, fantasy gods. Thank you for Josh Jacobs. Thank you for not playing him against me. Thank you for letting him help me win in a couple leagues. Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, fantasy
Happy
gods.
Thanksgiving. Everyone's like what you're grateful for, what you're thankful for. That's what I'm thankful for.
No Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, whatever. I got healthy kids and a wife, blah, 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 blah.
No,
it's just, the important stuff here is, didn't play against Josh Jacobs.
Two guys you didn't want to play against this week, Josh Jacobs and Mike White.
No, yeah, exactly.
Mike White led all starting quarterbacks in Week 12 with 11.3 yards per attempt. No other quarterback had 10 or more yards per attempt. So Mike White laps the field in that area. But, guys, the bigger story here is the return of Elijah Moore. And, boy, did Elijah Moore bring it in the postgame. Not just with the quotes, but with the look.
We love Elijah Moore. Did he have a big hat? Let's see this.
When you made that first the 42-yard catch and run, that was obviously your first touch there. What did that feel like? Do you feel a little liberated to kind of have the ball in your hands again?
Well, I miss it. I was talking to it yesterday. I was talking to the ball, and I was just like, damn, you already know how I feel about you. And I was kissing her, and I was telling her it's going to be soon, it's going to happen soon. So, it's just, be patient. It's going to come, man. The storm, you don't weather the storm, you become the storm, so I'm just thankful, I can't thank God enough, man.
So the ball responded?
Oh, yeah, she told me she loved me, and she wanted to get back to it.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there. First off, Elijah Moore assigning a gender to a football.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Kissing her.
Kissing her. Glad he didn't go further. It was a first date. I want to be respectful.
Carried her to the end zone
football,
once.
Carried to the end zone
You'd
once.
love to see that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're right. You want to listen.
Good first date.
First date. You want to be respectful. You want to be very respectful. He didn't mention whether he asked the dad for permission if he met the dad beforehand before he took. But listen, thank God, the ghost of Elijah Moore is back. Who was more excited when Zach Wilson got benched, Mike White or Elijah Moore?
Elijah Moore. It's not even close.
Yeah,
or Garrett Wilson, honestly, because it brought him back too. And that's the thing with going to Mike White is you don't just get a new quarterback, you get a new superstar wide receiver that you just activate out of thin air, and Garrett Wilson, and he was the dominant player on the field yesterday.
In games started by either Joe Flacco or Mike White, Garrett Wilson is averaging 19.4 fantasy points per game. In games that Zach Wilson starts, 8.4. He gets the 2 touchdowns yesterday, Garrett Wilson does. He's now had 7 or more targets in 3 of the last 4, 90 or more receiving yards in 3 of the last 4. You want Garrett Wilson over Elijah Moore, but Elijah Moore, who's been dropped in a ton of leagues, and we'll get into this more tomorrow on our waiver wire show, suddenly has signs of life because, Connor, you cover the Jets, obviously. When you're not here with us, you do a lot of stuff with the Jets on SNY, and so you know that team intimately. Is there any chance they don't go back to Mike White this week?
No, he's playing. He's starting. I think it's the rest of the year, personally. And I know he's got his Minnesota and Buffalo the next 2 weeks. It's a lot tougher than whatever is left of the Bears defense, who's dealing with a lot of talent problems, a lot of injury problems. But, no, I think this is Mike White's job to lose right now. And, honestly, with these playmakers, here's the thing I take away, guys. Garrett Wilson, 2 touchdowns from Joe Flacco in Week 2, 2 touchdowns from Mike White. Garrett Wilson, in my opinion, is a star with anyone not named Zach Wilson.
I agree.
Right
I think the thing as well with Wilson's game is that Mike White, he doesn't need to be Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. Just get it to him on a slant. Just make the easy stuff, and then he can do so much after the catch.
Well, that's what Saleh said, right? He makes the easy look easy, which is important. It's weird. There was a lot of debate going on in the Football Night in America watch room where we all watch the games together. And, because Chris Sims made this argument, I actually think he's right, which is that, you probably should have started Zach Wilson. If you wanted to salvage Zach Wilson, who's the number 2 overall pick for the Jets, you should have given him this game just because, Zach Wilson has not played well, but he's also had a brutal stretch of defenses that he's faced. He's had to face the Patriots twice. He went 5-2. Maybe it wasn't always pretty. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was in spite of him. He went 5-2, and being a young quarterback and losing to the Patriots and Bill Belichick is something that a lot of very successful quarterbacks have had happen to them. And so the question here becomes, if you want to salvage Zach Wilson's career, you probably should have started him against the Bears and give him sort of an easy layup and let him win, because now Mike White comes out, has this monster game. The fan base is all behind Mike White. I don't know, maybe you can talk to the locker room, but I just feel like, to me, it feels like Zach Wilson's, despite whatever they say, if Zach Wilson's ever going to have success in the NFL, it's not going to be with the Jets. He has to get a change of scenery. Like by doing this, by making him a healthy scratch, and Mike White having the kind of game he did, like Zach Wilson's done.
Yeah, I
That's
think
the
it's
key.
a quarterback competition for next preseason, potentially. That's Zach Wilson's best outcome at this point. And like Mike White, I mean, how real do you think this is? Or do you think that's a product of the Bears being already a bad defense and then losing multiple guys on top of that?
Not to mention Justin Fields. Remember, like it was Trevor Siemian, and then pregame we got some weird news that it was going to be Nathan Peterman. We talked about this. The line all of a sudden moved to -7.5. Yep. A lot of people went on the Jets. Ended up not mattering. They ended up covering it anyway. But then they go back to Siemian. There's a bunch of weird stuff going on pregame. But like they didn't even have like a real weapon to help try to bring them back against the Jets either. In addition to the fact their defense has just been decimated.
I think to your question, Jay, you can evaluate them separately. The Bears' defense is going to be a fantasy bonanza for whoever is playing them that week. You want to start that quarterback. But on the flip side, Mike White, from a fantasy perspective, helps Garrett Wilson, helps Elijah Moore, because his average time to throw was in the top 3 in terms of shortest. He gets the ball out. Zach Wilson, I think, was 49th out of 50 qualifying passers this year. He holds the ball too long. So that's the big takeaway from this game, is that it helps Garrett Wilson, it helps Elijah Moore, and ultimately helps the Jets offense that is built with training wheels, where a quarterback does not have to do much. They come from San Francisco, where they had Jimmy G for a long time and still do.
So, listen, as long as we're talking Jets, Connor, I want to turn this one back to you as well. The Jets' backfield, because they've run whether it was Breece Hall or Michael Carter, they have run the ball effectively so far this year. But James Robinson, a healthy scratch going into this game. Michael Carter gets injured. We see Ty Johnson with a really impressive touchdown. Yeah. How do you? It doesn't sound great for Michael Carter. How do you look at this backfield moving forward? We'll talk more about this on the Waiver Wire show, but tomorrow. But just having been around the team and going to all the practices, how do you see this backfield?
A mess of a backfield. Michael Carter hurt in this game, like you said. That's probably going to be a long-term kind of thing. I don't think he's going to be back next week. James Robinson, I think he's been dealing with a sore knee, and they're just not being very public about it. Bam Knight was the surprising one for me. An undrafted free agent out of NC State, gets a lot of carries in this game, so I think it's going to be the Bam Knight, Ty Johnson split carry workload going forward until those guys are healthy.
Because I don't think you're with us tomorrow. You got another gig. Where should fantasy managers look if they have to pick one? You don't want to invest too much into the Jets backfield. Yeah. So, but listen, there's going to be a lot of teams on bye next week, so you may need a running back. If you had to pick one, Ty Johnson or Bam Knight, where are you going?
I would go with Bam, especially if you're in PPR. Soft hands, big-bodied runner. They think he's their in-between-the-tackles kind of guy. They want to get him involved in the red zone as well, and he's just going to get more carries than Ty Johnson because you could keep him on the field in third down. So it would be Bam Knight for me.
I like the call here. By the way, let's be clear about we like Ty Johnson, but he's had opportunities with the Jets before, and they've always gone to whoever else was there.
Yes, every time.
For whatever reason. I mean, it was an impressive touchdown. I mean, it was that was an impressive, run after contacting to get into the end zone. But Bam Knight over Ty Johnson, that is where the happy hour lands as well.
All right, moving on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Shocking
Swagwars. My Swagwars.
Your swag. Matthew Berry's Swagwars.
I love the Swagwars. He's hated them. Right, exactly.
Might get back on him, actually.
You might get back on him again.
Jeez, Trevor Lawrence looked good.
The good news,
like Elijah Moore's football.
It'd be great if, just in the middle of the show, Jason just took off his Bo Jackson
and had Trevor Lawrence
jersey.
I do like Trevor.
Yeah.
I'm not actually convinced that he doesn't have that planned right now.
You have no idea.
Or you could dress like the Jaguars mascot. If anybody got to see that yesterday.
That was peculiar.
Yes, very odd. But you do what you got to do to
get
people
the other day, seeing you in a Saudi Arabia soccer kit, that was a bit much. I was just like, what? Good God, what are we doing?
It's getting out of control.
It is getting out of control.
We need to have an intervention with you. We won't do it on the show. We will do it off the air.
Thank you.
To be polite.
Exactly.
Trevor Lawrence, really heating up. A really good couple-game stretch here. The bad news in this one, Travis Etienne injured. Everybody's been waiting for Etienne to be the featured guy. He gets hurt in this game.
He does, and so just a brutal break, no pun intended, for anyone that had him. I know of a couple friends in guillotine leagues that was like, this one's tough, especially because, he was so good. But here's the thing. According to Jaguars head coach Doug Peterson, Etienne was actually cleared to return against the Ravens after suffering that foot injury. The team decided not to take any risks again, obviously, given the massive injury he had last year. But that's what's positive here, is that it looks like he should be back to go. Etienne was also quoted after the game saying he'll be all right for this week. So doesn't look like any major injury. Etienne should be back next week. Not that that's any consolation to anyone who got just 2 rushing attempts from Etienne in this one. But and I don't even know, like, if you wanted to quote back up him, like, you'd think it's JaMycal Hasty, right? He has the nice game, especially in the passing game, 5 for 67 in the touchdown here. He played 78% of the snaps after Travis Etienne left the game, including all of the goal line snaps as we see the touchdown here on your screen. But they signed Darrell Henderson, and I do think that's uncomfortable with a mascot. There's like a mascot like in an American Speedo, and I don't know, is that like is that patriotic or pornographic, or could it be both?
It could definitely be both.
It could be both.
Yeah, definitely
crossover.
Definitely
there's a mashup.
Definitely not safe for work. I don't. By the way, because there were pictures of it on social media. I don't know if you guys saw this with the Jaguar, the Jaguars mascot, the Jaguar wearing the All-American thong, but like it's a butt floss thong. Like he turned around and like he's got the
cheeks.
Yeah, there's
cheeks.
Jaguar cheeks there. Like it's a lot going on. It's a lot going on. We're like a week away from the Jaguar having an Instagram account and being like a spokesperson for Bang.
It's a good sponsor for that.
Right, exactly. Probably has an OnlyFans. I mean, I'm just saying.
The Swagwar OnlyFans.
The Swagwar OnlyFans.
Oh, boy.
Just saying. I mean, come on.
It's too good.
Yeah.
All right, gather myself here.
Right. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that I think Hasty showed enough here. I mean, look, 2.3 yards per carry, but that was against the Ravens. I think Hasty showed enough to probably hold off Darrell Henderson as the backup here. But I think the good news here is that you can breathe a sigh of relief of Travis Etienne, and you could also breathe a sigh of relief if you have Trevor Lawrence. Like I have Trevor Lawrence as my quarterback in a couple of dynasty leagues, and I've sort of been like, am I? Like, I drafted him early, obviously, in his rookie year, thinking like he was going to be a franchise cornerstone of one of my super flex dynasty league. Yeah, I had the number 1 pick one year. I traded up to get him, and he hasn't been that guy. This year, I mean, Urban Meyer, you sort of throw it all away from last year with Urban Meyer, but this drive, as you're seeing it here on the screen, was a thing of beauty. He led the comeback. He had 3 touchdowns against the Ravens. In this one, great comeback. And by the way, a ballsy call to go for it as well. Get the 2-point conversion, get the win. Swagwars, baby, Swagwars. Anyway, I just think that if you've been riding Trevor Lawrence as your fantasy quarterback, or you have to, like, I think both from an NFL perspective and a fantasy perspective, this was a game. This was a flag plant game for Trevor Lawrence, saying like, I'm here as a QB1. Detroit, Tennessee, Dallas, and the Jets are his next 4. You certainly like him over the next 2 at Detroit and at Tennessee, where you attack that team is the secondary.
Yeah. The most painful drive I've seen all season was the 2-minute drill that Trevor Lawrence had against the Giants a month or so ago. It was just absolutely brutal football to watch. And now, yesterday, against the better defense, I mean, he looked like peak Justin Herbert on that drive. Yeah. He looked like that was like a superhero origin story type of drive from Trevor Lawrence, and doing it against that defense. Yeah, I think that he is here to stay, and I know there's been a lot of debate about Lawrence and Fields, but
yeah, very quietly since week 6, he's the 8th best quarterback in fantasy on a points per game basis.
On the other side for the Ravens here, the Gus Bus leads the backfield, 16 rush attempts.
Before we move on real quickly, I know that I'm going to move on. I just want to point this out that Zay Jones, has had double-digit targets in 2 straight and 3 of the last 5. Again, they play Detroit next week. They play Tennessee. 38% target share here in Week 12. It's still Christian Kirk's, passing game, but Zay Jones is legit, guys. And wait till you see how many teams are on a bye next week. Like, you're going to be begging for Zay Jones. I'm just putting that on your radar.
No, it's a great
especially
call
against Detroit next week.
It's a great call. Zay Jones finishes as a top 5 wide receiver in Week 12. On the Ravens side of things, a classic Lamar Jackson top 10 finish, but more importantly, their backfield right now. Gus Edwards with 84% of the team running back carries in Week 12. It's a good sign moving forward.
Yeah, Kenyon Drake's not very good.
No.
And the fact they got back Gus Edwards, there was no real easing him back into it. He's definitely the guy that you want in that backfield, Justice Hill, Kenyon Drake, don't worry about them. They have a very favorable matchup as well, at least in terms of game script against the Broncos. That line has opened Baltimore -8 against Denver next week in Baltimore. I think that line is wrong, frankly. I think it's going to close 10 or bigger. The Broncos are one of the worst teams in football at the moment, and Gus Edwards should be running plenty.
Yeah, at Pittsburgh, at Cleveland, and Atlanta, to your point here. Your fantasy right-at are not as good as my fantasy right-at. Not that you're keeping track. Not that anyone's keeping track, but just in case you were, his fantasy right-at was Lamar Jackson, who is not as good as my fantasy right-at Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, Rachaad Bateman really killed me there. He really killed me. I'm going to count on Devin Duvernay and Demarcus Robinson.
The fact, I mean, he's had one game with multiple touchdown passes since week 3. Obviously, the rushing is what keeps his floor high. He had 89 yards rushing in this one. He ended up being fine. Like, he finishes with 23.1 fantasy points, but he didn't look great. You know, he missed some big throws in this game. Like, you know what I mean?
I think the problem is that it felt like a big Lamar Jackson game, but he was QB8. Like, this is better than he's been in a long time.
No,
he still was QB8. It just didn't.
Yeah, I just
didn't really deliver.
I don't know that there's much you can take away from this. I mean, you're still going to roll him out there, but
you
just
start him.
Maybe lower expectations here. It is the return of the Gus Bus. We weren't sure how on Fantasy Football pregame how this would play out. With how much Kenyon Drake would there be? We did say that we liked Gus Edwards to get into the end zone for a touchdown if you had to start one of these running backs. Hopefully you could avoid it and sort of see how it plays out. I mean, he still finishes as running back 31. That's the problem. No passing game usage for Gus Edwards here, but he got 84% of the team's running back carries in Week 12. This feels like Gus Edwards' backfield moving forward.
Definitely.
Another big fantasy matchup, Chargers-Cardinals. Cardinals lose yet another soul-crushing one under Cliff Kingsbury. Justin Herbert, quarterback we had big expectations for coming into the season. He finally has an excellent game, finishing as QB3 on the week. But, guys, I mean, when you look at this one, it's just nothing is going right for Arizona throughout this entire season right now.
No, James Conner was the story in a way with the 25 carries, but outside of that, and obviously you're not going to play the Chargers' run defense every week, and Conner was relatively efficient. So, I mean, yeah, now they're 4-8. Now you start to worry about whether they start to shut guys down and whether Marquise Brown with his injury as well. There's just every bad stuff swirling around the Cardinals. Just don't want any part of that team.
I don't mind looking into, look, I'm not, again, you don't want to just sort of give him away, but I might explore trying to trade James Conner. To your point, I mean, it's his third straight game with a touchdown. He got 93% of the Cardinals running back rushes in Week 12. He's now had 24 more touches in 2 of the past 3 games. Those are all the stats that I would use to try to sell James Conner because he has a bye this week. So you're not using him this week. Home to New England.
Can't run on him. At
Denver, home to Tampa Bay. The only game you really feel good about is that Broncos game. And so because those are all pretty good run, you know, the bye and then the Patriots and the Bucs, I think, will both be pretty good run defenses here. Again, you start worrying about shutting guys down. James Conner's on a long-term deal. He has nothing to sort of prove. He's got a multi-year deal here. And so, you know, and there's going to be a lot of 4-7. You're already seeing Kyler, you know, mouth off a little bit to the media. He's angry. I mean, not mouth off. Like, no. But he's frustrated is what I mean. Kyler Murray's frustrations are boiling over. And so there's already rumors circulating about Cliff Kingsbury job security. Those are probably only going to intensify, especially if they lose to the Patriots out of the bye, which I would think there's a decent chance that happens. Yep. You know, so I don't mind exploring, seeing what, you know, hey, especially given James Conner's injury histories, I might try to, like, you know, while there's still a positive message here. The positives is that, hey, Marquise Brown came back, played a lot of snaps, looked like Hollywood Brown.
Yep.
And Hopkins was Hopkins. So both those things were positives for the Cardinals.
Last one here before we get to break. The Niners take down the Saints in a low-scoring affair, but Christian McCaffrey, the usage kind of low right now. It just feels like they're being very careful with Christian McCaffrey.
He's had fewer than 16 touches in each of the last 2 games, right? Since joining the Niners, he's averaging under 12 carries a game. Now, obviously, he has a big role in the passing game, but he's had under 40 rushing yards in 3 straight, and in this one, just 4 receptions. So, yeah, there's a little bit of a concern. I don't know that there's a takeaway, though, because you're still starting Chris McCaffrey. I think the issue, though, is that, and by the way, it feels like they want to protect Chris McCaffrey, but Elijah Mitchell gets hurt in this one. We'll know more, but this is Kyle Shanahan saying, quote, "We'll see how Elijah goes. Most likely Elijah will be out a little bit, and that will give opportunities for those guys," meaning those other guys here. Jordan Mason was active, had 5 for 25 after Mitchell's injury, but I think he plays special teams, and so we could see Tyrion Davis-Price, who was inactive but got run the last time Mitchell was out. Maybe he gets activated. Maybe they go back to more McCaffrey here. You're still starting him, but I think the concern is that when you draft Chris McCaffrey where you do, which is the first or second player overall, it's because this is a guy who can have like 30, 35. He can have Josh Jacobs-like games where you just like, yep, doesn't matter what else I did or you did. I had CMC and I'm winning this week.
Yeah.
And he's not that guy. He's still an RB1, but he's not that I'm going to just beat you, you know.
The Miami game will be very instructive because I think it's a lot easier to justify giving carries to Elijah Mitchell over Christian McCaffrey than it is Tyrion Davis-Price. So you would expect that McCaffrey should see an increased workload.
Jay, on the Saints side of things, Alvin Kamara, it's been a tough year for Alvin Kamara, but this stretch is somehow even worse as he finishes with only 7 fantasy points, RB 39 on the week.
Can we get Jameis Winston in at quarterback for New Orleans, please?
At some point, you would
this
think.
Is ridiculous. Shut out by the 49ers. They did have a lot of opportunities to score, but just kept on shooting themselves
in the fumbles
foot.
for
There is talent on this offense, and it just hasn't lived up to expectations, and Kamara is suffering as a result, and he's obviously contributed to that suffering too. I mean, Matthew had him, I think you had him 19th or 20th in your rankings this week, and I think that's kind of where he's going to be, right?
No, I mean, like, I think 19th, 20th, first, something like that before the Thanksgiving games. Like, as low as I've ever ranked Alvin Kamara, he actually made the hate list this week, and I didn't hate him enough. He winds up as running back 39. He had 7 fantasy points. His last 4 games, guys, he's averaging 13 touches. First 6 games, 21 touches per game. So whatever reason, they're not giving him the ball as much. He's had single-digit fantasy points in 3 of the last 4. On the road this year, he's averaging single-digit fantasy points, 9.4, whereas he's averaging 21 points per game at home. He's had 1 game this year. Where he scored a touchdown. Now, again, right, he almost got in, like it was a dump off, and like he's at the goal line and it gets fumbled. If he holds on to that ball and he scores, maybe the narrative changes on him a little bit. Tough break there for Kamara and his managers, but the Saints offense looks broken. And I don't know what you're doing with Kamara. And I mean, like, he's basically he's a flex at this point, which is barely a flex. And you're just sort of like, until something changes, like they go to a different quarterback or the schedule gets easier. They're at Tampa Bay, then a bye, home to Atlanta, at Cleveland, at Philadelphia. So there is a schedule that comes. I mean, Falcons, Browns, Eagles are really nice matchups for running back. So if he can get through the next 2 weeks with Kamara, he might be. Here's what Kamara is. Kamara is a good buy low if you know you're making the playoffs.
Yep. Because
I don't think he's going to be usable the next 2 weeks. But there's a nice 3-game stretch when he comes out of the bye that you feel pretty good about.
We'll have our eyes on the Saints this week to see if at some point they do move to Jameis Winston, who they're paying a lot of money. He's on the books next year.
Yeah.
We don't
His
really
soul
know.
is hurting.
Yes. Yeah. We don't understand what's going on.
Soul,
but with that, we are going to take a break, and we're back. We're going to bring the positive vibes
Saints?
back.
Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson to the Saints. Who says no?
Sam Darnold, he's back. But there's going to be a different man seeing ghosts in Carolina today. It's going to be Russell Wilson. The ghosts are going to come for him. Ooh. Sam Darnold's going to win outright in this magnificent return to the NFL, to the playing field. I think the Panthers are just better than the Broncos in their current form.
You wearing a Jets jersey and putting your faith in Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
I know.
He's back.
That's the ghost of Christmas past, right?
By the way,
better than Zach Wilson.
Great call and
yes,
damning with faint praise right there. But you were absolutely right. Sam Darnold, 11 of 19 for a touchdown. He also gets a rushing touchdown, which I teamed the most Sam Darnold touchdown of all time, where he takes a run, fumbles, picks it up, and then literally stop, drops, and rolls like he's like a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Like he's in gym. Yeah, he's a little kid in gym class practicing stop, drop, and roll, but manages to get in the end zone and a touchdown. I mean, it was like, crazy. But Sam Darnold, here's what you care about with Sam Darnold. DJ Moore, the ghost of DJ Moore. Elijah Moore gets back. DJ Moore, all of our disappointing, talented wide receivers with the last name of Moore got back. Poor Chris Moore couldn't get any love from Kyle Allen. But what I will tell you here is that DJ Moore in Week 12 had a 35% target share. He's had 12 career games with Sam Darnold as his starter. He's averaging 15.3 fantasy points per game, a 29% target share. That's more fantasy points per game than in Baker's starts, where he's averaging 8.7. Better than P.J. Walker, where he's averaging 11.4. It's only his second game this year with 70-plus yards. So you feel good about – I can't believe I'm saying this, but, you feel good about Sam Darnold to the extent that you care about DJ Moore. Now, they're on a bye this week, but they come back. They're at Seattle, home to Pittsburgh, home to Detroit, at Tampa Bay. None of those guys really scary as it relates to DJ Moore.
No. And look, I think the jury is in on Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's not good, but he can support DJ Moore. And that's the only thing that he can do. It's the only thing he's been able to do his entire career is support the fantasy value of DJ Moore. So if you're a DJ Moore, if he's on your roster, then you're feeling good about this. And then also Deonta Foreman, who just keeps on trucking on a Carolina team that sneakily over the past 5-6 weeks has been perfectly competent to the point where they can support a running back with game script, and Deonta Foreman just continues to produce.
Yeah, he's still not getting a ton of passing down work in this one, right? He didn't catch a pass in this one, so that's the problem. Is he's a little touchdown dependent. 24 for 113 yards sounds great, like that massive workload, but again, doesn't get in the end zone, no passing game work, and so Deonta Foreman in Week 12, despite having 113 yards, is just running back 25. He needs a touchdown to pay off. Now, it's worth noting that in the 6 games since Christian McCaffrey was traded, he's averaging almost 20 touches a game. He's averaging over 14 fantasy points per game. He's got 110 or more rushing yards in 4 of those 6 games. He's a legit player, but the problem is if they're going to let Sam Darnold, what do you give it to Foreman? Stop it. You know what I mean? He did, I feel like, pretty clearly, though, separate himself from Chuba Hubbard in this one. 24 compared to, Chuba Hubbard did have 17 carries here. They were up big, obviously. The Panthers as a team had 46 rushing attempts in this one. But I think it's clearly Foreman over Hubbard, but, he just doesn't have passing game usage.
Staying with the theme of workhorse running backs, your 7-win Commanders, led by Brian Robinson, with his it's insane.
7-5.
Never ends. Without Chase Young.
Without Chase Young,
helps on the way.
Oh boy,
Spirit. Look at that hat from Brian Robinson. His first 100-yard game, season high 20.5 fantasy points. And if you're looking for a hat of this size, just ask Brian Robinson where to get one.
What's the inspiration behind the big hat?
I don't know. I'm just helping promote, one of my guys. He made big hats, so y'all want one? Let me know. Thanks, Brian.
I got the first order.
Yep.
How do? Oh, there we go.
Why?
I like that. I'm going.
Looks
I'm
good
going,
on you, Barry.
Right, it does
looks
look
good on
me.
Ahmed.
Listen,
who's drinking as well.
Absolutely, and I like that I've got it backwards, and I'm pro any hat because it shows how it hides my baldness, and so Brian Robinson didn't give out a phone number or anything like that. How we can let him know? Do we just tag him on social media? Yo, Brian, how do I need a B-Rob? I need a big hat.
Yeah.
Just let him know.
That's the strangest thing that's happened all season, and also the best thing. It's absolutely unbelievable that happened.
Great idea, horrible execution. We don't know who's making these hats. You just need to ask Brian Robinson.
I'm sure, you're trying to promote it. Well, you got a ton of promotion. No one knows the name of the company or a big, They
would have sold thousands.
I thought, it's just
oh boy,
it's insane.
BigHats.com.
But here's what I'm going to tell you: BigHats.com. Who knows, right?
Try it.
It's Turd Ferguson. It's funny because it's a big hat. It's bigger than a regular hat.
Yeah.
You see it? I miss Norm Macdonald. What I will tell you here is that I don't miss Brian Robinson because he is there, he is present, and Brian Robinson, after being shot in the preseason, coming back, having games like he is, just first off, being alive is a miracle. Being on a football field is a miracle.
Having a big
hat
on his head.
Having a big hat is a joy. Brian Robinson can do no wrong. Wear all the big hats you want, my friend. Wear all the big hats you want. First career 100-yard game. He averaged 5.8 yards per carry. It's his 4th straight game with 13 or more touches. But I thought this was interesting. He caught a touchdown pass. 20 receiving yards doesn't seem like much, but if they're going to use him even a little bit in the receiving game, it's interesting because we know the Commanders want to be run heavy. They love the grit of Heineke, but this is a team that needs to run the ball to be successful. They want to grind it out, play good defense. That was a perfect game script against the Falcons, and they almost screwed it up. They almost blew it, because Joey Sly missed a field, an extra point. Joey Sly drives me crazy. And, and then they drove down, and it looked like Mariota was going to drive them to a win, but then, Daron Payne got some big old paw up there. And
you forgot Mariota can't ththrow the ball.
Yeah, I mean, luckily Mariota's also bad, so, it all worked out. But, hey, hail to the Commanders. Hail victory.
7-5.
5-1 under Heineke. And we should have beaten the Vikings, by the way. We had them.
Okay, should have lost some other games as well, but that's okay.
What are we going to do?
Bloodbath, that is the NFC East.
But anyway, I do think that it is, Robinson and Gibson are both viable RB2s moving forward. Foreman's a touchdown-dependent flex. I forgot to say that.
Do you think you'll rank Robinson ahead of Gibson going forward with this kind of workload or no?
No, I mean, they're playing the Giants next week. I think I'll still probably have but I'll have them much closer. Gibson still has more passing game usage and upside, so I think I'll still have, for at least one more week, I'll have Gibson over Robinson. But I'm going to do a little digging. I know some people. I know some folks around the Commanders, and see if there's been a changing of the guard.
Robinson's good. He's the 11th highest graded running back on PFF.
Yes.
He's legitimately good.
Yeah, he creates his own yards. Staying in the NFC, let's look at the Bucs. Chris Godwin having his best game of the season high in receptions, yards, and most importantly on this show, fantasy points. And no Leonard Fournette. Rachaad White takes over in the backfield, Barry.
Yeah, this was one of my shot-for-shots here where I said he would have 20 fantasy points. He finishes with 19.9. I'm counting that as a win.
It's a loss.
I think
it's literally a loss. That's okay.
I count it as a win.
You can't come closer.
Right, screw you.
Do the Bucs count the Browns game as a win? Do they count that as a win? 17-23, we won?
Probably. Who invited the Australian? What the exciting thing here about Rachaad White is tons of usage, right? 91% of the snaps. He's now had 45 touches over his past 2 games. And so, Fournette, who's averaging just 3.4 yards per carry this season, is now dealing with his hip. We'll see if he's active for next week. But I think even if Fournette comes back, Rachaad White has shown enough that he's earned, a share of this offense. Now, they play New Orleans next week, which is a tough defense. I mean, New Orleans, like, for as bad as their offense is, their defense has been playing tough. So, like, he's going to be, basically a flex next week. But I think, Rachaad White had massive usage in a good matchup, and he made the most of it.
Yep. Also the receiving work. You like to see that as well.
Correct.
Before we get to break, have to talk about some other winners. Maybe some of the most useless fantasy touchdowns you will ever see in a week. Check out this list.
Seriously. I mean, like, Keefe, who even knew he was in the NFL? Durham good.
Smythe.
Good. Durham Smythe. Byron Pringle, good. Oh, Dare Ogunbowale? Really? So the Texans finally scored a touchdown, and it's not Dameon Pierce? Listen, I've had Anthony Schwartz on my dynasty team for a little 3 years. Not Jewish, by the way, Anthony Schwartz. And, they don't use him at all. Every 4 weeks, Jamal Agnew pops his head out of the ground just to be annoying. Oh, great. Oh, look, it's Josh Oliver, a.k.a. not Mark Andrews. Like, this was the most useless. I can't tell you how many unbelievably annoying touchdowns there were last year. Completely annoying this week. I felt like more than most weeks. They were just like, wait, that guy? Oh, no, not that guy? Like, my most annoying touchdown, and you guys can pick out yours. My most annoying touchdown, Michael Pruitt.
Yeah.
Oh, now that Kyle Pitts is done, now you throw to the tight end? Screw you, Arthur Smith. Screw you, Marcus Mariota.
My one's Keefe. I thought he was playing left back for Germany. I didn't know he was catching touchdowns in the NFL.
Jarring touchdown.
All right. Shutting down Ferran Torres.
Right. If he came up to you and said, "Hi, I'm Keefe," whatever,
I'd be like,
right, and you would know?
Yeah.
Well, no, but like he said, I play for the Buccaneers. Would you know if he was telling the truth or not?
No, I wouldn't. I would
but
assume
he would
he
wear
was
a
a liar.
Buck shirt the next show we do.
Yeah, he'd be like, I'm the biggest. He'd wear Keefe's jersey. Yeah, I met him. Now I'm buddies.
Go car.
All right, we're going to break. When we're back, Sunday Scaries. Probably could have included those winners part of the next segment. Download the Roto-World app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster and get the latest injury updates, player news, plus much more delivered right to your phone. Available in your app store today. Sunday Scaries, guys. It doesn't get much scarier than this. Mike Evans, his 3rd straight game under 55 yards. He does not finish as a top 100 wide receiver in week number 12. Jay, what is going on with Mike Evans this year?
It's just the lack of touchdowns. Like, he's on pace. The yards are okay. The receptions are okay. But he had 13 and 14 touchdowns the 2 years prior. This year he's got 3. And he's been suffering from the Bucs offense just not being nearly as explosive.
They're just not scoring touchdowns. I don't know that it's Mike Evans. Like, the team isn't scoring touchdowns. Tom Brady isn't throwing touchdown passes. Godwin had the big game in this one. Like, given all the struggles of the Buccaneers offense and his lack of scoring, still, on a points per game basis, he's wide receiver 19. So, he hasn't scored since week 4. He's had 0 end zone targets in 5 of the past 7. Third straight game with under 55 yards, as you see it there on your screen, and yet still a top 20 wide receiver on a points per game basis this season. Now, they play the Saints next week, and we'll see if Lattimore is back, because Lattimore always seems to have his number. But I feel like positive touchdown regression is coming for Mike Evans. I actually think he's a great buy low. I like, he's too talented. The volume is there. Like, it's going to come. Like, so I'm actually still in on Mike Evans, who gets the Niners, Bengals, and Cardinals after the Saints next week.
Tough day for the Texans, and maybe even a tougher day for Dameon Pierce. Now, back-to-back games with under 5 fantasy points. Barry, what do you think's going on with him in this slump?
Well, the team's awful.
They're terrible.
I mean, they're brutal.
But they've always been bad.
And Mike Florio said on Fantasy Football Pregame, we had Mike from Pro Football Talk on, and he said, feels like they're kind of, they can't come out and say they're tanking, but feels like they're kind of tanking. The Texans, I don't know if that is true or not. What I will say is it has been, maybe he's hitting a bit of a rookie wall. He's had massive workload, which is not something he had in college. The one thing I will say, though, this week they get the Cleveland Browns and they're at home. So I want to withhold judgment. One more week. If he can't do it against the Browns, if he falters against the Browns, then you're like, okay. But everyone runs well against the Browns. That's one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. They're one of the more friendly teams to opposing running backs. So I'm not panicking yet because the workload is still there, just the production hasn't been.
I'm with you. I'd buy low on Dameon Pierce if I could. The Commanders game, they got a great run defense. And then I think the Miami game, they just basically the game's done. Let's just get him out. Let's put extra miles on him.
Yeah, which I think is going to be a theme this season. I think they're going to really lighten his workload on a lost season. Last one here, Juju Smith-Schuster, season low with only 3 targets this week, Barry.
Yeah, I mean, he played on only 39% of the snaps, which is 4th among Kansas City wide receivers, but felt like they were sort of easing him back in to this one as well. Prior to this week, he'd had at least 85 yards in each of the last 3 healthy games here. I'm not that concerned yet about Juju. Felt like, again, just trying to ease him back into a game in which, they had in hand. The Rams played him a little bit tougher than I think they expected, but, the Rams also have a good defense, so it's not out there. Juju's going to be fine.
He'll be fine.
All right, one more break here, but one more back. It's last call talking Monday Night Football props as these guys look to stay hot after a great Sunday Night Football props. Monday Night Football, Colts, Steelers, and here are the most bet Monday Night Football props, courtesy of our friends at BetMGM. No shocker there, guys. Jonathan Taylor very heavy on this board.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor, the rejuvenated Jonathan Taylor under Jeff Saturday. You see his odds to score the first touchdown, plus 400. Anytime touchdown score of minus 160. And then Matthews, man, Pat Fryermuth gets on the board over 44.5 receiving yards, minus 110 the odds.
It is time for last call. Go ahead, Barry.
I was just going to say at BetMGM, if you want to bet, use the promo code Barry, if you will. And get a $1,000 risk-free bet. First bet, I should say here. By the way, I just got to think, can we show that picture one more time of Jackson DeMille? Or is it Jackson DeVille? It's Jackson DeVille. Jackson DeVille, who's the Jaguars mascot. You see it there with the Speedo?
Oh, boy.
So I have great news. I just got an alert. He is joining Dan Bilzerian. He's going to be promoting Ignite. So very exciting there for Jackson DeVille. He's going to be part of the team over at Ignite.
Oh,
there you go. And he is in negotiations with Fashion Nova. All right. So just quickly, as we talk about some Monday Night Football props here real quickly, you mentioned Fryermuth here. How about Paris Campbell? Last 4 games with Matt Ryan, he's had 5 or more receptions at 24.5 target share. Steelers are bad against the slot, and the number here is just 3.5 receptions. So give me the over on 3.5 receptions for Paris Campbell, who's hit this number in each of the last 4 games with Matt Ryan.
Okay, I like it. I'm going Najee Harris over 18.5 receiving yards. The Colts are excellent defending the run, but they are terrible defending pass catches out of the backfield. They're bottom 6 defense defending running backs. In terms of receiving yards, Najee had 6 targets last week, 6 targets a couple weeks before that too, so I think he will go over a pretty low 18.5 number.
I'm looking at the Steelers offense as well because of that Colts defense. Kenny Pickett over 23.5 rushing yards sounds like a lot. When Kenny Pickett doesn't know what to do, he's just been running lately, and it's working for him. And the Colts defense doesn't really scare you in that regard.
All right, fair enough. We like that. Does Jeff Monday get a win tonight?
I don't think he does. I think the Steelers win this game. They're 2.5-point dogs. I think TJ Watt just changes the whole complexion of this team. Yeah. They came out of the bye looking much better as well, the Steelers, after that awful loss to the Eagles. So I think the Steelers might win.
I think so too. Listen, TJ Watt, Matt Ryan, TJ Watt, Matt Ryan. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm team TJ Watt here. All right, listen, it's closing time, which means you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So for Jay Croucher and Connor Rogers, I'm Matthew Berry. Thanks for tuning into the Happy Hour. Good luck. I hope your Monday Night Miracle comes through tonight. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay? Respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.